Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be seeing if we can get this vintage Burlington Northern Sharknose locomotive from TYCO running again. This is a locomotive that I picked up in eBay lot fairly cheap. I think it's probably worth about $7 if I divide up the value of the entire lot. And it doesn't run, unfortunately. It's got a TYCO power torque drive in it. And these are probably some of the most unreliable drives out there, but they tend not to be too difficult to repair usually. So I have a bit of confidence we'll be able to get this one running again, but only time will tell. Let's take it over to the track. I'll show you guys exactly what it's doing right now, and then we'll get working on it and see if we can get this thing riding the rails once again. So I just want to set this thing up on the track and show you all specifically what it's doing right now. As I recall last time, I think the light came on or something like that, so we'll give it some power and just see if it will do anything for us. You can actually hear it sounds like the motor is turning over. In fact, it's kind of trying to go, but it's certainly far from being a runner. So it's going to need some work, but just the fact that it's showing some signs of life is a really good thing, because that hopefully means the motor is still good in this thing, because once in a while, you do have burnt out armatures and things like that. But this one, it's got some hope to it. So let's bring it back over to the workbench. We'll crack it open and see if we can get it running again. All right, let's crack this thing open and see if we can figure out what's going on. I guess the best thing to do probably would be just to take the whole drive out, which typically isn't too hard to do. You just kind of get a screwdriver into this piece, and you either take this clip out or you take this little clip out. That was easy. Alright, so here we are inside the drive. To remove this piece right here, you usually just squeeze in on the sides and you just kind of wiggle it around, and typically it will just kind of come off like that, so really nothing too complicated. Let's try to see if I can manually turn this thing. It does seem to be turning, although it's not great. In fact, I'm also seeing a bit of hair and stuff, so not so good. Let's try removing the trucks and see what's going on. Sometimes you'll open these things up and it's just like a bath of old grease and stuff, and it's just really not uncommon for these things to seize up. I mean, the motors in them, first of all, are not terribly powerful, but also, a lot of these are over 40 years old, so, they will have a fair bit of mileage on them, and, like, the lubricants are usually long dried out, because in a lot of cases nobody's ever changed them, which is important. So yeah, this one so far is not looking awful. There is a fair bit of hair though. We're going to try to carefully remove this gear. I always try to be careful, because these gears are, not the gears, but the pivots are very sensitive on these engines, so if you're not careful about pulling it straight up, you can end up actually just taking the whole pivot off. I've had that happen quite a few times. It looks like somebody actually has opened this up before. I don't know, there's old grease in here, but there's not a crazy amount of it, so that's a good thing, but it still needs to get cleaned out for sure. And I'm going to remove the rest of the gears too, because if one gear is bad, the rest of them probably have the same problem. This has the most sensitive pivot, by the way, so I'm going to try to really be careful with it. Alright, so that's overall not looking too bad. We're going to need to wash all that up, obviously. And I guess I'll see how the motor's doing. I don't really like opening these things up, because I find they're kind of complicated to get back together, but at the same time, if there's stuff burning on the commutator, which there probably is, that needs to go, or else it's definitely going to trash the motor. So I guess opening it up is the way we go. This is all looking pretty good, actually. I'm happy to see that the commutator's not all burnt up. And how are our springs looking? The springs are both good. If these are really like compressed, that's a problem. I mean, you need adequate pressure, obviously, to push the brushes into the commutator. So yeah, if these are compressed, either try to stretch them back out, which is kind of the red-green kind of way of going about things, or if you want to be really professional, you could try to buy new springs or salvage them off something else, but I personally find that a little bit tricky to do sometimes. Yeah, overall this is not bad. The coils all look good. I don't see any burn spots on them, so I think we got a good armature, so that's good. Now, let's just clean up this whole block here, clean up all the gears, re-lubricate everything, and then see if she'll kick. Alright, so we got all the components all cleaned up, so we're now going to reassemble this whole unit right here. We'll start by putting the motor bearing back in, and I guess we'll just follow that up with the motor. I'm just going to quickly clean this part off with the fiberglass pencil. And it'll just help improve electrical connectivity just a little bit, and by cleaning out the centers too, we'll extend the lifespan of the motor hopefully a little bit. Yeah, that should be adequate. Before I put that back into, I'll just put a little bit of oil in there. Doesn't need much. This side, you can be a little bit more liberal with the oil just because there's no commutator, but on the side with the commutator, you need to be very careful not to put too much, otherwise you'll probably end up getting it on the commutator, even if you just put a tiny bit, because what will happen is as the motor spins, it will kind of draw the oil out, and then it will spit it out all over the commutator, and then it will start to burn, and you'll trash the commutator eventually if you do that, so not something you want to do. Anyway, we're now going to put this all back together. I'm doing this a little bit different than usual. I've actually taken the brush plates out. I don't entirely like doing that because I find these parts are kind of sensitive, and also getting them back in can be a little bit tricky since in a lot of cases, you know, they were soldered on here and they actually burn the plastic a bit, so it's not in perfect condition. But I just don't feel like fiddling around with this for a long time, so I just decided to go about it that way. Anyway, we'll put a screw in here, and we're going to put the top one in first because the bottom one actually requires the brush plate to be in place. That's how this brush gets power through the frame, so it's quite important that you don't do anything with that. So I'll torque that down a little bit. Oops, getting ahead of myself a little bit here. So here are the components. Keep in mind we've got it already through this part, which is important. I'm going to put this one on first, and you'll see there's no spot to screw it on anything, so we know that this is in fact meant for the top one. Well, I managed to get this all back together. I decided just to do it off camera because it was just taking forever fiddling around with these parts to get them on, but I finally did it. I'm not sure if taking these out actually saved me any headaches, but whatever, it's all back together now, so hopefully it should work. Now we're going to put the gears and whatnot back in, so yeah, we'll put down a little bit of oil right here, and we'll just slide the gears on. And we're going to coat the top of this one because it is going to come in contact with the larger gear. And let's get that on there. That seems to be turning pretty well. That all seems fairly good. Now let's just get that pivot gear back on, which is not too hard to do. I think it should work. Optimally, could put some CA or whatever, but we'll see if it's strong enough to turn over and then go from there, I guess. Yeah, we're lubricating this area too. These trucks sometimes have problems, and pivoting, that can cause derailments and things like that, so just make sure these can turn freely. And we'll lubricate all the wheel bearings here. You can't really mess up the direction of the wheels because, of course, you got the gears on one side, metal on the other. Actually, I'm going to clean that one up because yeah, it looks kind of messy. Cleaned up the wheels themselves as well, so now we can put this all back together. All right, that all seems good. I'll just try to get those clips back on. So we got that back in. I'm just going to quickly open up the rear truck and just oil the bearings and clean off the wheels. Well, we've got the locomotive all back together, so why don't we take it over to the track and see if our efforts have paid off. All right, let's give this thing some power. Huh. Yeah, so remember earlier I was talking about putting CA on that pivot gear? It looks like it did need it after all, so back to the workbench this goes. These drives really are finicky. I mean, usually you do have to put some CA or something down once you remove that pivot gear. But it seems snug enough. I thought I was going to be able to get away with it, but I guess not. So, yeah, I guess we'll disassemble this again and get down to that gear. You have to be so careful not to accidentally get this on the teeth of the gear. So you have to make sure it all stays on top. Even if a little bit flows down the side, it's going to get in those teeth and it's going to mess things up. Alright, I think we got it on okay. Let's reassemble it and have another go at that. Alright, so take two. Let's see if she'll work this time. Oh. Come on. It's coming back. Yeah. Well, I've given this thing some time to break in, just let the lubricants kind of flow around and everything, and I've got to say this locomotive has turned out a lot better than I was expecting. It's certainly not flawless, you know, these old power torques never really are, but as far as they go, this is actually pretty good. It seems to be running fairly consistently, it's not too loud, it's just overall not performing too badly, so yeah, I'm genuinely really impressed with it. It can even do a relatively good low speed for a power torque. I mean, this is obviously not a great low speed as far as locomotives go, but for a power torque with a 3-pole, this is actually pretty good. It obviously is, you know, cogging quite a bit, but you know, these motors just never perform terribly well to begin with. So yeah, overall I'm very pleased with it. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. And with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching.